Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. Los Angeles, summer evening. The golden lights of Le Diamant restaurant sparkled on the glass and marble facades, attracting the attention of passers-by and luxury cars. Inside, the air smelled of the delicate scent of fresh flowers and the subtle blend of refined dishes. The waiters, dressed in black and white, moved with almost military precision, anticipating the every whim of their demanding customers. That evening, a man quietly entered through the side door, avoiding the flashes and curious glances. Dressed in a sober shirt and dark trousers, with sunglasses perched on his nose, he appeared to be just another ordinary customer. Yet behind that calm face hid Cristiano Ronaldo, a famous footballer and discreet entrepreneur, owner of the restaurant and several luxury establishments in the city. The staff, busy serving regulars and smiling at wealthy customers, failed to recognize the global icon who had just entered. To them, he was just another customer. But unpredictable fate would soon show how dangerous it was to judge someone solely by their appearance. In the shadows, an arrogant and self-assured waiter named Brandon chatted with his colleagues, completely unaware that this customer was about to turn his life upside down. Tonight, a simple remark would set off a chain of events that would change everything. The evening was in full swing at Le Diamant restaurant. The marble tables reflected the light from the chandeliers, and the clinking of glasses and cutlery accompanied the hushed conversations of the diners. Each guest was treated like royalty, and each dish was served with impeccable precision. That evening, a figure quietly entered through the side entrance, carefully avoiding the attention of cameras and the waiting staff. The man, dressed simply but with effortless elegance, wore sunglasses despite the dim light. He walked calmly, a slight smile on his lips, observing the details of the restaurant with a careful eye. Brandon, an arrogant waiter of many years, stood not far from the entrance. He was always quick to judge his customers, especially those who didn't seem to fit his image of the Diamond's regulars. Upon seeing the man, he frowned and whispered to his colleague. "Look at this guy. He doesn't seem to know what he's getting into. Do you think he can afford this kind of place?" His colleague snickered, but Brandon didn't just laugh. He walked over to the man with a certain smugness, convincing himself he could correct this supposed intrusion with a little sarcastic humor. The man, without a word, asked for a table at the back, where the light was soft and no one would bother him. His voice was calm, almost measured, but each word resonated with quiet authority. Brandon, surprised by the assured tone, had no idea that he was looking at the owner of the restaurant, the one who had made Le Diamant such a prestigious place. As Brandon walked away to prepare the table, he exchanged a knowing look with his colleague. "It looks normal, too normal for this kind of place, right?" What Brandon didn't know was that this simple thought would soon backfire. The man he had just arrogantly judged was no ordinary customer. He was Cristiano Ronaldo, and tonight, Brandon was about to learn that luxury and power sometimes hide behind the most unexpected faces. Brandon returned to his station, looking pleased with himself. He didn't know why, but he had decided to keep an eye on this strange customer. He found his demeanor too calm, too detached for a mere visitor to such a prestigious restaurant. "Have you seen this guy?" he whispered to his colleague, his tone full of condescension. "Yeah, a little weird, isn't it?" he replied, uncomfortable with the man's quiet confidence. Brandon, on the other hand, wasn't content to just whisper. He loved judging customers, and tonight, he'd decided this customer was going to get his own personal lesson. He approached Cristiano's table with a fake, forced smile. "Good evening, sir. How may I help you this evening?" he said in a tone that was meant to be polite, but betrayed a hint of arrogance. Cristiano looked up slightly from his menu and replied calmly. "A quiet table at the back, please. I prefer not to be disturbed." Brandon frowned, feeling like he wouldn't be able to provoke an immediate reaction. But he couldn't help but whisper to his colleague, loud enough for a few customers to hear. "Honestly, he looks like he doesn't know what he's doing here. He seems to think he's someone." The nearby customers exchanged surprised glances, but no one dared to intervene. Cristiano's face remained impassive. His calmness unsettled Brandon, who didn't know how to react. He assumed the silence was out of fear or timidity, which only exacerbated his arrogance. As he returned to his station, Brandon said to himself, "I'll see how long he can hold out with this superior air." What he didn't know was that behind that calm face, Cristiano was carefully observing every move. He knew exactly what Brandon was thinking and measured every word, every whisper, with the precision of a master strategist. Brandon was about to set in motion a chain of events that would turn his life upside down. The service was in full swing. The customers were enjoying sophisticated dishes while Brandon, fueled by his arrogance, spotted every detail that seemed suspicious about Cristiano. He sensed that this quiet customer was a challenge to his ego. The moment Cristiano sat down, the waiter thought it was time to set the record straight. With a smirk, he approached the table, attracting the attention of a few curious customers. "So, you're sure you want to stay here, sir?" Brandon said, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "You seem to be feeling a little overwhelmed by the luxury, don't you?" A silence fell. The customers exchanged shocked glances. No one had ever heard a waiter speak to a customer in such an open and sarcastic manner. Cristiano looked up from his menu. His face remained impassive, but his eyes shone with a calm, determined glow. He showed no anger, made no sudden movements. "Thank you for your concern," he replied calmly. "I'm here to dine, not to be judged." But Brandon didn't stop there. Thinking the customer's silence was fear, he leaned in closer and whispered loud enough for the other customers to hear. "You look like someone who's trying too hard to make themselves important. Seriously, you look a bit ridiculous with your superior air." A few customers stifled nervous laughter, while others frowned. The air in the room suddenly became heavy. But Cristiano didn't move. He simply placed his hand on the table, his eyes fixed on Brandon with a quiet intensity that spoke volumes. Brandon, satisfied with his victory, returned to his station. But behind him, the murmurs of the customers turned into silent questions. Who was this man really? What Brandon didn't know was that Cristiano had mentally recorded every word, every gesture. And soon, he would reveal to the arrogant waiter exactly the cost of contempt and arrogance. Tonight, Brandon had just lit a spark that would ignite his own pride. After Brandon's public insult, most of the customers looked away, uncomfortable with the scene. But Cristiano sat impassively, as if nothing had happened. His calmness disconcerted Brandon, who thought he had succeeded in unsettling him. Cristiano gently placed his menu on the table and inhaled deeply, letting silence fill the space around him. He watched the glittering chandeliers, the clinking of glasses, and the ballet of the waiters. Every detail was noted, recorded in his mind. His calm wasn't fear, it was strategy. Brandon, unaware of what this man was hiding, said to himself, "He's really strange, why isn't he reacting?" The waiter approached the table to bring him the water he had ordered. Cristiano looked at him with an almost imperceptible smile, polite but full of authority. "Thanks, Brandon. You can leave me alone now." Brandon, thinking the smile was a sign of submission, allowed himself another sarcastic whisper to his colleague. "He's pretending, but I'll see how long he can last." Cristiano, for his part, showed no irritation. He knew that every word Brandon said, every gesture he made, revealed the waiter's arrogance and disrespect. Rather than react angrily, he chose patience, watching the situation unfold exactly as he had planned. A few customers, intrigued by the tension, began to whisper among themselves. The atmosphere in the restaurant was changing. It was no longer just a place of luxury and prestige, it had become a silent stage where respect and arrogance would be measured. In his calm, Cristiano knew the moment of truth was approaching. Brandon had just set in motion a chain of events that would soon reveal his arrogance and prejudices. But for now, the key word was patience. Every gesture, every word, would be used to teach a lesson that Brandon would remember for the rest of his life. As the evening wore on, the restaurant, Le Diamant, continued to shine beneath its majestic chandeliers. Cristiano Ronaldo, always calm and discreet, enjoyed a moment of tranquility at the back of the room. Brandon, for his part, continued to observe this strange customer, convinced that he hadn't yet discovered anything dangerous. Everything changed when the restaurant manager, Mr. Hastings, approached Cristiano's table to take a special order. A quiet, hushed conversation ensued. Curious and thinking this was routine, Brandon approached to listen. "Mr. Ronaldo, everything is ready for the VIP table you supervised," Hastings murmured. Brandon froze, his eyes widening. "Mr. Ronaldo?" he thought. His mind was spinning. Was this possible? The client he'd just publicly humiliated wasn't just a visitor. He inched closer, unable to believe what he was hearing. You're the owner?" Brandon stammered, his voice betraying his panic. Cristiano slowly looked up at him, a calm smile on his face. "Exactly. And what you just said, in front of all the customers, is going to have consequences, Brandon." Brandon's world seemed to collapse in an instant. Fear, humiliation, and regret mingled in an overwhelming mixture. Every sarcastic word he'd ever spoken, every contemptuous comment, replayed in his mind with a heightened intensity. The customers who had witnessed the initial scene began to whisper among themselves, curious to see this customer's reaction. Brandon felt all eyes turned toward him. Power had changed hands in an instant, and he no longer had any control over the situation. Cristiano, calm but firm, stood up slowly, approaching Brandon. Each step sounded like a silent warning. "Brandon," he said, "we're going to talk privately. It's time you understood the weight of your words and the importance of respect." Brandon, trembling, didn't dare answer. He had just realized that arrogance and contempt had a price, and that tonight, he would pay for it, but in a way he would never forget. Cristiano led Brandon into a small, private room reserved for staff meetings and confidential discussions. The door closed behind them with a soft click, and the waiter immediately sensed the gravity of the situation. "Sit down, Brandon," Cristiano said calmly but firmly. Brandon obeyed, trembling slightly, unable to meet the gaze of the man he had humiliated. Every muscle in his body was tense, as if he were expecting an outburst of anger. But Cristiano remained seated, completely in control. "You think you can judge someone by their appearance," Cristiano began, without raising his voice. "You think a shy or different customer deserves less respect, but you didn't know who I was." Brandon hung his head in shame. I didn't mean to. I didn't think," he murmured, unable to finish his sentence. Cristiano tilted his head slightly, watching Brandon's every move. "You don't understand the impact of your words. This isn't just a matter of etiquette or protocol. Your words can hurt, humiliate, and leave a lasting impression on the people you serve. You've forgotten the bottom line: respect is the foundation of all human relationships." Brandon felt a lump form in his throat. He'd thought his arrogance would go unnoticed, that his sarcasm would just be a bit of a joke. But now he realized he'd faced someone whose authority and power were far beyond his comprehension. "I could fire you right now, Brandon," Cristiano continued, "but I won't," he added, placing his hand on the table. "You have a lesson to learn, and I'm going to give you that chance." The waiter felt his heart race. An opportunity, but also a huge responsibility. He understood that this confrontation was not a simple punishment, but a real opportunity to understand humility and respect. Cristiano stood up, leaving Brandon alone with his thoughts. "Reflect on your actions, Brandon. Every word counts. Every gesture counts. And the next time you serve someone, remember this lesson." Brandon sat there, breathless, realizing his life had changed in an instant. He had just understood that beneath the luxury and calm lay an authority that no one should underestimate. The next day, Brandon showed up for work feeling a mixture of nervousness and guilt. Every customer seemed like a test, and every move had to be perfect. But Cristiano, in control of the situation, had planned a little lesson so Brandon would truly understand the importance of respect. "Brandon," Cristiano said as he arrived at the restaurant, "tonight you will be serving a very special guest," he added calmly. "You must be on your best behavior, without arrogance or judgment." Brandon felt a shiver run down his spine. He didn't know who it was, but the intensity in Cristiano's gaze told him there was no room for error. When the guest entered, Brandon immediately understood. He was an international celebrity, admired by millions. The tension mounted to a fever pitch. Brandon's every move was watched by Cristiano, who was sitting at a distance, carefully scrutinizing the waiter's behavior. Brandon began his service hesitantly, but as the evening progressed, he realized something crucial: treating every customer with respect, regardless of their appearance or status, made service smoother and more rewarding. The smiling, satisfied guest didn't notice Brandon's nervousness, but his attitude had changed. At the end of dinner, Cristiano approached him. "Well done, Brandon. You're beginning to understand what it truly means to serve someone. It's not just a job, it's a matter of dignity and respect." Brandon, his hands shaking, whispered, "Thank you. I understand now, really." Cristiano placed a hand on his shoulder with a smile. "You have a second chance. Don't waste it." That night, Brandon felt a change within himself. Arrogance and judgment had been replaced by humility and vigilance. He had learned, thanks to Cristiano, that power and authority are not measured by money or title, but by respect and how one treats others. And as Cristiano left the restaurant, invisible to most, Brandon knew he'd just learned a lesson he'd never forget. The game had changed, and this time, he was on the side of the one who truly respected others. A few days after the private confrontation, Cristiano decided it was time to reinforce the lesson for Brandon. He organized a special dinner with a high-profile personality, a demanding and influential client. The idea wasn't to punish Brandon by humiliation, but to make him understand the importance of every gesture and word toward a client, especially in public. When Brandon saw the guest enter, his blood ran cold. He was a famous Hollywood actor, known for his demanding service and his ability to make a dinner memorable, for better or for worse. Brandon felt his heart race. Cristiano, sitting at a distance, watched intently. Brandon's every move, every smile, every gesture was scrutinized. The waiter now had to put into practice everything he had learned: humility, politeness, and absolute respect. Dinner began, and Brandon got to work. Initially clumsy, he began to improve as the minutes went by. He anticipated the customer's needs, spoke courteously, and showed genuine attention. The actor, impressed by the impeccable service, complimented Brandon in front of everyone present. Cristiano, silent witness to the transformation, then stood up and approached. "Brandon," he said calmly, "now you see the impact of your words and attitude. Every customer deserves respect and consideration. Just because someone seems ordinary or different doesn't mean they can be judged." Brandon, flushed with embarrassment but proud of his progress, nodded. The murmurs in the restaurant turned into admiring glances. The customers understood that something special had just happened. "Thank you," Brandon murmured, his eyes lowered, but with sincerity. "I will never forget this lesson." Cristiano smiles. "You've got the gist of it. Now, apply it every day. It's the only way to become not just a good server, but a true professional." That night, Brandon realized that the initial humiliation he'd caused Cristiano had been subtly but effectively reversed. He'd learned that respect isn't commanded, it's earned, and that no position or title gives him the right to belittle others. Over the next few weeks, the change in Brandon became evident to everyone in the restaurant. Every customer was greeted with a genuine smile and attentive service, regardless of their appearance or status. Brandon's colleagues, initially surprised, began to notice the difference and admire his transformation. Cristiano, always discreet, continued to observe him from afar. He knew that the real lesson was not measured only by a dinner or a public confrontation, but by consistency in time and attitude. One evening, after a long day of service, Cristiano invited Brandon into the private office. "Brandon," he said calmly, "I see your efforts are paying off. You've learned the importance of respect and humility. You're now an example to your colleagues." Brandon looked down, moved. I didn't know I was capable of changing so much. Thank you for giving me this chance." Cristiano placed a hand on his shoulder. Everyone deserves a second chance, Brandon. What you've learned here goes far beyond restaurant service. It touches all human relationships. Brandon smiled, genuinely this time, feeling a newfound pride that was nothing like the arrogance of before. Every gesture, every smile he offered now was guided by a true understanding of dignity and respect. As the days passed, the entire restaurant benefited from this change. Customers noticed the sincere attention, and the atmosphere became even more refined and warm. Brandon had learned to serve not only with skill, but also with heart. That evening, as Brandon watched Cristiano quietly leave, he fully understood the lesson: true greatness lies not in power or money, but in treating each person with respect and humility. A few days after Cristiano's last lesson, the restaurant, Le Diamant, seemed even more radiant than before. The atmosphere was no longer tense, the waiters moved smoothly and respectfully, and the customers felt genuine attention at every turn. Brandon, transformed, greeted each person with a genuine smile. His arrogance was gone, replaced by a humility that now made him a valued and respected server. He never forgot Cristiano's calm, authoritative gaze during their first private encounter, nor the dinners that followed, where every gesture counted. That evening, Cristiano came in again, this time for a quiet dinner. Brandon, barely recognizing him through his sunglasses and the discretion of his guest, greeted him with a subtle bow and a genuine smile. "Good evening, Mr. Ronaldo," Brandon said, this time respectfully. "We are honored to serve you." Cristiano smiled softly, satisfied. "Thank you, Brandon. You've learned a lot, and I'm proud to see the change. But remember, the lesson never ends. Every day is an opportunity to show respect and dignity to everyone." As Cristiano sat down at his table, Brandon felt a mixture of gratitude and pride. He knew this experience had transformed his view of the world and his profession. He understood that judging others too quickly could be costly, and that every person deserves to be treated with respect, regardless of their appearance, status, or reputation. The restaurant continued to glow under the golden lights, but this time, the brilliance came not only from the luxury of the place, but also from the human transformation that had taken place within it. Brandon had learned, through a subtle but powerful lesson, that true prestige is measured by how one treats others. And in a discreet corner, Cristiano Ronaldo, master of the place and of the lesson, observed the scene with satisfaction, knowing that he had sown a seed of respect and humility that would last forever.